what do we have in Jewish sources and what do we have in Hebrew Bible manuscripts? There isn't a single Hebrew Bible manuscript that has Yahweh or Yahweh. Nothing, nowhere, anywhere. There isn't a single Jewish source that has Yahweh.
Wait, that's
Let's
important.
say an ancient or medieval Jewish source.
That's important. Yeah. You are saying that there is no even one source, manuscript evidence, right? Textual manuscript evidence that have the Yahweh.
This is a beautiful example. So listen to this. I was writing something up about the name Yahweh, and then I want to put the Hebrew vowels in.
Of course.
And so I went to look in Hebrew manuscripts. What are the vowels? Is it a patach or a kamatz? Right? In modern Hebrew pronunciation, they're both pronounced ah. So which one is it? I didn't have any manuscripts. So I wrote to these Christian folks or maybe Hebrew roots folks who say Yahweh, and I say, which vowels do I put in here? Is it a patach? Is it a shva? Is it a segel? That's what I thought, right? Based on the pattern of yarbeh, of other he-feel verbs, I mean grammatically. They said, we don't use Hebrew vowels. Okay, but if you can't translate it into the Hebrew vowel system, then it has no meaning in Hebrew, right? So, and of course it's the patach shva segel, without getting too technical, which is based on the pattern of yarbeh. But where did I find that? In Gesenius's Hebrew grammar, which is from the 19th century. So I couldn't find a source before the 19th century that gave me the exact Hebrew vowels to use. Galatinus is writing in Latin. Yes. What is it in Hebrew? I got to go to a 19th century German to get the answer.
That's the information that I wanted to share with my audience. It's like Gesenius was a German scholar.
Yeah. And a brilliant scholar.
It was brilliant. We still using it.
For sure. He's the basis for Hebrew grammar.
So he was translated into English, and that's the source of...
Well, the German. He wrote in German.
He wrote in German, but was translated into English,
right.
And then we use this source. You know?
Right.
Okay, but this is interesting. He's German guy.
Right. Well, so then now what about Yehovah, which is we find that I have a study called 10 Rabbis Speak Out on the Name, and I actually right now have 19 rabbis who explicitly say that the vowels of the name are Yehovah. Shva cholam kamatz in Hebrew. Yehovah. Now you could say they didn't know what they were talking about.
Like Shiva, cholam kamatz pronounced like o, a.
And or look, there's different Hebrew dialects. In some Hebrew dialects, the kamatz is aw, right? So it could be Yehovah, right? That's like the Spanish you speak and the Spanish of Argentina, right? That doesn't change the meaning.
Well, this sounds very close to the modern Hebrew speaker, the vowels.
Right. Well, that's the traditional Sephardic pronunciation. And it actually goes back to what we call the Eretz Yisrael vocalization, which we find in some manuscripts as a whole separate discussion. But here's what some of the rabbis say. They say it has the same vowels of the word le'olam, which means forever. And why do they choose that specific word? Because he says in Exodus 3:15, and he said further to Moses, he says Yehovah, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Zeshmi le'olam, this is my name forever. So they say the name Yud He Vav He has the same vowels of le'olam, which is e o a shva cholam kamatz. Now you could say these rabbis didn't know what they were talking about. You could say they're wrong, but what you can't say is this is something that was invented by ignorant Christians, because we have multiple rabbis who. Some of them were aware of what the Christians were saying. Others had no clue what the Christians were saying.
Yes.
And they all believed it was Yehovah. There's at least all of those that I'm talking about. There is no rabbi in historical sources who says it's Yahweh or Yahweh. That's from literary sources. Then we go to the Hebrew Bible manuscripts, and we have the vowels Yehovah.
Yes.
We have them.
People say, "Oh, that was plays that." Just playing here the devil advocate here, okay? People say, but that was play that based on the Adonai thing because the scribes want to hide the name and. Right. So how do you respond to that?
If they wanted to put in the vowels of Adonai, they would have put in the vowels of Adonai. The vowels of Adonai you can hear is A-O-A, not E-O-A.
Okay.
And then they'll say, oh, well, it was impossible to put an A into a Yud. I could show you that it's not impossible. I could show you manuscripts where they actually did put in the vowels of Adonai.
As a mistake or
No. There were scribes who said, I want to put the vowels of Adonai in there, and they actually did it.
Oh, okay.
right?
So you explore those evidence.
Oh, absolutely. So it wasn't many scribes, but there were scribes who said, we read this word as Adonai. Nobody disputes that the Jews read it as Adonai.
Let me explain this. Your Nehemia advisor was one of the professor in the same university I studied. One of my professors was Joseph Ofer, right? So Nehemia explored, I don't know how many manuscripts you explore in your research, but the PhD of Nehemia is basically...
I think my dissertation went through like 90,000 manuscript pages or something crazy.
Pages.
I don't even remember.
So I don't know how many times in those pages you explore the sacred name, the tetragrammaton, the Yehovah.
So look, at my PhD dissertation, I wasn't looking at that question. I was going back a step further. And why was I going back a step further? So I've had people say to me, they say, well, Nehemia, you're saying, and this is...
Wait. You were not looking at that question in your
No, I was looking at something even more fundamental, and I'll explain that. Okay. Let's back up a step. So years ago, I found in the Aleppo Codex that normally the middle vowel was not put in, and every once in a while the scribe put in the middle vowel, meaning when the vowel isn't put in, you can't read the name. Yes, and that is the scribe saying, don't read it, because if we're trying to prevent people from reading it, not me, the scribes, are trying to prevent people from reading it, and therefore they leave out a vowel. And every once in a while, about between 6 and 8 times, depending how you count it, the scribe of the Aleppo Codex put in the missing vowel, making it Yehovah. And my initial understanding, and I think this is probably still true, is he put that in by accident. Why did he put it in by accident? Because in his head he knew it was Yehovah.
Yes.
And then the response I got from people is, well, the scribes never made a mistake in the name. It's impossible. So I investigated that and ended up writing a PhD dissertation to answer that question. Did the scribes make mistakes with the name? And when they made a mistake, what did they do? Well, they did lots of different things. So there's a rabbinical rule, you're not allowed to erase the name. So what do you do when you make a mistake? And I documented in my PhD dissertation numerous different things they did. Sometimes they actually erased it, which they weren't supposed to.
I saw one of the lecture that you gave in Bar-Ilan in Hebrew was actually when you show manuscript where they erased the name.
We say in Hebrew chad v'chalak. Definitively, they took a razor and they erased it. They weren't supposed to, but they made a mistake. Sometimes they cut it out. Sometimes they put a circle around it. There's a whole bunch of different things they did. But the point is that I had to answer a more fundamental question because I had serious scholars telling me they never made a mistake with the name. It's impossible. All right, let's go see if that's the case. I looked through thousands of shelf marks of Bible manuscripts. Over, I don't remember the number. It was like over 90,000 pages. Maybe it was over 100,000. I don't remember. Thousands and thousands of pages searching for mistakes. And sometimes you go through 1,000 pages, you don't find any mistake, right?
Yes.
Or you find a mistake and it's really hard to see because you don't have a good photo. But I ended up finding 12 or 13 different methods of dealing with mistakes of the tetragrammaton.
The tetragrammaton, again, is the sacred name, the sacred name of God.
Right. And then how did they fix the mistake? And so to say they never made mistakes, any manuscript of any length is going to have some kind of mistakes. And what makes the Aleppo Codex, the most important manuscript of the Hebrew Bible, what makes it so valuable isn't that there's no mistakes, is that the mistakes have been fixed. And this is what Maimonides actually says, this 12th century rabbi. Yes. He mentions the Aleppo Codex, and he says it's so important because Ben Asher, the scribe, spent years proofreading and fixing it. And now, when I was studying the Aleppo Codex, I actually got to hold the Aleppo Codex in my hand.
This is important.
And examine it with a microscope.
Yeah, this is
which
important.
No one's ever done before.
I know. You get excited at this point, but this is important. We're almost closing, but this is important. Well, the Masoretic text is the basic text for all the translation, basically.
So the Aleppo Codex is the best representative of the Masoretic text,
which is very important.
Yeah, you can't say the Aleppo Codex and the Masoretic text. The Masoretic text is the tradition of the Bible, down to the letters and the dots and the jots and the tittles, preserved by Jewish scribes.
From where all the translation coming from. Basically.
Absolutely.
So this is you hold the thing in your hands and you explore, you examine it.
I spent 3 days examining it with a microscope, literally.
Yeah. Okay.
The Aleppo Codex is the best representative of the Masoretic text, and already in its time when it was written in the 10th century, it was considered the best representative of the Masoretic text. Scribes used to come from all over the Jewish world to Jerusalem to check their manuscripts against the Aleppo Codex.
Perfect.
And in that manuscript, the name usually is missing a vowel thousands of times. But
which vowel?
The middle vowel of the name. So Yehovah, it was written Yet, Va, and there's a missing vowel in the middle. And in Hebrew, you can't pronounce the word without that vowel. And really, it's a cue to the reader, don't read this word.
Yes.
either by accident or on purpose, right? That's a different discussion.